Chaos. Woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning, chilling with coffee mugs, me and coffee chugs, talking education all across the nation, pushing boundaries, thinking innovation. Chaos.
All right, that looks good. Okay, here we go. Hello, everyone. How you doing? Welcome to another episode on Living on the Edge of Chaos podcast. I am here today with another phenomenal guest, someone who I think definitely has a life story of growing up in an education, navigating chaos, and then being able to really make sense of it, at least from the outside, to really produce some awesome wonder ideas. And in particular, just I recently have just been following her journey of, I don't want to call it like life wellness or health, or I we were talking before we hit recording, just the idea of this full circle of, as we're thinking about going back into school, teaching and learning, but also like that human side. And I feel like my guest today really encompasses all the things that we're looking for. So I'm super excited today to have Tara Martin on the show. I will let her introduce herself, and then we'll definitely fill in with other things, because I'm sure the whole podcast could be all the incredible things she has created, developed, and is doing. So, Tara, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you on here. And for those in education who haven't heard of you, which I'm sure is not too many people, who are you? What do you do? And what in the world do you got going on?
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm super honored. So who am I? I am Tara Martin. Everybody calls me, all my friends call me T. I don't know if you knew that, but it's pretty common. I feel like when people call me Tara, it's so official. I feel so important.
Yeah, yeah.
Or like I'm in trouble. But yeah, so I started in education. I was a teacher. Loved being a teacher. I taught in elementary primarily. Um, Dabbled a little bit in middle school, then moved into instructional coaching, where I got to be an instructional coach at all levels. So fun. And every role I've actually ever had professionally, I've found very fun. Even my first job at McDonald's, I like also really love that. I don't know, something about, I think I just like the work atmosphere. Some
Yeah, absolutely.
um, I moved into instructional coaching later to district administration. And that is when Dave Burgess kind of discovered me and I pitched a book to him to write. And before I finished my first full year of at the district level administrator, he says he stole me away to come work for Dave Burgess Consulting. I willingly went. It was a great opportunity and got to be then I was the director of publishing. I was director of relations and social media kind of parts. And then now I've moved into this role of director of publishing, where I get to do all kind of cool things. I get to mentor authors that are also educators and kind of have that educational lens behind helping get their message out into the world. Helping our production team to understand the educational lens of what they're talking about, and then also coaching and mentoring authors through helping them to like content coach, like sharing ways that they can share their message out with different audiences. And I get to do a lot of what I did as a teacher, but with a totally different crowd, which is so fun. And I travel and speak. I've written a couple of books, Be Real, Educate from the Heart, Cannonball In, the children's book, both of which I'm super passionate about. So I do get to travel and speak to not only adults, but also students. And I find that to be just so, it fills my teacher cup, a little bit. So I really get the best of a lot of worlds. And I'm so grateful for my job and for Dave just believing in me. I honestly, when I took this job, I'm just gonna dive into this for a sec. I was like, Dave, I don't even know how to do anything publishing. Like,
Right.
barely knowing how to write a book. And now even looking back at Be Real, I'm like, man, I could just write such a better book now that I'm actually a coach of writers.
Sure.
But I remember him telling me, you have the things like I couldn't teach someone, and everything that you don't know, I have a person that can teach you how to do.
Mm.
And I think that's just a powerful way to look at hiring and probably what it's going to look like for the future for our students. They're going to be going into, we've said this a lot of years, but they're going to be going into roles that they've never been trained to do. But if they have these certain skills, and I'm not saying I have them, but Dave seemed to think I did, and it's working out. But I had skills that he felt like he couldn't teach. And that was the most important part, because everything he felt like I didn't have was teachable. And I think it's just a valuable thing to think about when we're thinking about our learners, and really just be real in general. My message, I think those are the parts and pieces that we want them to come with, to have those soft skills, to be able to be fully authentically themselves, so people can see what they do have to offer and teach them anything they don't already know.
Oh man, I love that. What a great answer to the intro, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I got 75 questions to ask. So I want to get into the idea of story, since I mean you have published books, you have a children's book, you have your Be Real book, and I know you have a blog and then podcast and a website, and then now you're helping other authors. So I want to put a pin in the idea of the importance of story, because this is something that I have found to be like a very much a new passion of mine. Like, how do we weave story into everything we do? But before we do that, I want to ask a different question about what you were just talking about and frame it in, if Tara, the you of, I don't know, 10, 15 years, you can go back in time and pick a timestamp there, could see you now, as you've talked about, Dave saw something in you that maybe you didn't see in yourself quite yet. What would surprise you the most of where you are now on your journey and all the work that you do? I mean, and I would say work on yourself, work in the education space, from the you of the past. Like what's part of that story for you? Because when you were talking about how Dave saw something in you, and I'm like, how valuable that is, that sometimes we need that nudge to be like, you know what? Yeah, I do have that. Not in an arrogant way, but just like, oh, someone saw it in me, and it's like, oh, it actually was here all along. So what about you? What has surprised you the most in your journey from, I said 10 to 15, but it doesn't have to be that. You can pick any imaginary number you'd like.
Wow, that's a great question. I would be completely shocked at where I'm at, honestly. I mean, I I like to think I've always been a big dreamer, but I feel like I would have never even dreamt, landing in this position, doing what I do, combining all of my loves like education, speaking, writing, um, building relationships. And now, like, being able to be into the fitness world. I mean, right now I feel like life for me is just a bunch of things that I really, really passionately love, and I have the opportunity to do them every single day, and I'm just so, so grateful for that. I think if I were to go back, even as even as early as second grade, I talk about my second grade teacher a lot, Mrs. S. She was probably the first adult to, one, ever love me, but also ever like truly believe in me. And I think I remember that year so vivid. I remember her just taking the time to teach me to read, which I didn't know how to read when I joined the second grade, and really just making me believe that there was something special in me at
Mm.
that age. And I think there was some seed that was planted then that gave me hope, and it carried on all through even to where I am today. And I would have never imagined I would have been the first generation graduate of my family, just break away from the norm that I had seen every day, which was a lot of abuse, a lot of chaos, a lot of, just hurt, and not anything any child would ever want to go through, and not anything I hope any child has to go through, but I know they do. Um, but just being able to build a new life and kind of, um, you know, trailblaze in a direction I had never seen. And once I graduated high school, I want to say at that moment, I started realizing, like, wow, I can actually do this. And it was kind of like my book, Cannonball In. It's just like one jump. The first jump is the scariest. And once you
Yeah.
realize, like, you're not actually going to drown, like, you know how to swim and you swim to the top and you get to the top. Yeah. In the book, she faces all kinds of criticism, her own from others, all the different things. And that still happens in the world every single day when I make a
Yeah.
jump. But the jumps get a little bit easier. I mean, like, think graduating graduate school and then moving into teaching and loving that. Like I said, every role I've ever had, I've just been so appreciative and so loving of it and so immersed in it. And then Dave seeing something in me and moving me into this role, and I just keep jumping. I just keep trying something new. And it's not like I don't get nervous about those jumps, because it's like the diving board gets a little higher, or maybe you're trying to cut a backflip in the middle of the cannonball or something else, but I do astound myself each time I do it. And every time I'm like, look at you, girl. Can you believe this? And I think once you have done a few jumps in life, whatever that is, that's been placed, that opportunity that has been given you, and you go ahead and just take a chance on it, it's always so amazing to me how you feel afterward. And then also how it gives you just a little boost of confidence to try something new if you get an opportunity that comes up again.
I love it.
I don't know if that fully answered your question, but I'd be
No,
astounded by
it
everything
did.
I
It
do right
did.
now.
Yeah, no, it's great. So I'm gonna stack. This is a really bad podcast way of going about it, but I don't know how else to do it. So I'm gonna stack a couple thoughts, and I'm gonna try to frame it as a question here, and I'm gonna
Do
let
it.
you approach your answer however you want. So I'm just gonna give you that up front here. So you're talking about your book Cannonball In, which is an awesome children's book, about taking that leap, right? Kind of fully committing into whatever this might be. Um, I love that message. I also think that when a lot of people like look at that, they think it has to be some monstrous leap, right? And I think for some people, it's always like that first step, kind of that dabbing the toe in the water, so to speak. It doesn't always have to be like this full like life readjustment type, or my phase. It's not like a midlife crisis where it's like, oh, I got to completely just restart everything. It doesn't always have to be that way. So I think there's a little bit of misconception there. But my kind of question that I want to go to, I'm going to connect it to your other book, Be Real. It's not my perspective. It's not necessarily what comes first, the chicken or the egg, but I love your framework of to be real and the cannibal concept. And how do you see that in your life, or as you're speaking with people? How do you keep kind of cannonballing in, so to speak, to figure out who that real person is? Because I'm thinking about teachers entering this new school year, and every year in education, I feel like it gets a little harder and harder, right? It's always more stressful. And we have the things that we know that are best for kids. And we've got all these different things that come with education. And then we're also trying to like navigate our personal lives, because the job of educators can consume you 24/7 if you allow it, because our hearts just are always thinking the job. So as I prefaced you earlier, this was kind of a big word vomit. How do you see those two, I'm going to call them books, but really worlds colliding, of this kind of cannonball in, fully committing, but also being real to even know what to jump in for, but also like we don't know until we try, you know and I watch your journey, and it's like, man, you're in the CrossFit, you're in the running, you're doing the ABCs, you're talking educate. I'm seeing it like the through line, the thread in everything you do. Talk to me a little bit about how you think through those big things. Like, because I think that's important for people to kind of be like, oh, great message, but I'm not doing a new career path, right? Like, I mean, it may not be that for everybody. And I try to, it doesn't have to be that huge to begin with.
For sure. I feel like I love this idea and this thought. Obviously, it's my two passions blended to one. So
Yeah.
it's really exciting for me to talk about. Um, but to answer your question, I feel like we start with be real, right? REAL is an acronym in the book. It is all about showing yourself relatable, exposing vulnerability, approachable, and learning through life. And I honestly couldn't think of a better thing that a person would want to be. There's no curriculum that's needed to be real. There's also there's no program for this. Like if you are breathing and you are listening to this podcast right now, you can be real. That's how easy it is. It's exactly who you are. And the more that we are able to show ourselves relatable to our learners, whether that be small children learners, adult learners, author learners, whoever it is that we have the opportunity to serve, the more relatable we are, the more likely, obviously, we move to E, that we can expose vulnerability, but we also allow them to do that as well. And when those two things are happening, the learners feel like you are approachable. They're like, I love this person. I feel comfortable with this person, you know? And when those things, the first three letters of real are happening, we can then learn. They want to learn from us and we want to learn from them. And the more we're able to relate to our people and understand that humans in general are more alike than they are different, we face a lot of similar issues. A lot of us have baggage and things that we carry every single day. We hide behind smiles. And the more we understand we're empathetic with those that are around us, it's a lot easier to create this culture of belonging where everybody feels like safe. And once we can feel safe, we can then learn through life, whether it be good or bad, you know, no matter what situation we're going through. I feel like every journey has lessons, right, through life. But the more we create this culture where everyone feels this sense of belonging, I think that's really when cannonballing in can happen. That's where learners feel like they can take a risk. And yeah, they're going to have self-doubt, just like in the little book, the little girl who was, it's based on a true story. The little girl, she's just dealing with a lot of self-doubt. She knows how to swim. And if you think about us as teachers, we know how to teach. Like we know how to do the work that we have been trained to do forever and we're very passionate about. But sometimes taking a big leap and trying something new feels very scary. But in the book, her dad's just encouraging her to go to the diving board and to jump and do just as he has shown her multiple times. And eventually she gets up the courage and she does it. And she's so proud of herself. She sinks down to the bottom. She thinks she's going to die, but she doesn't. She swims to the top. That's very eloquently written. But as I'm explaining it, it's just like in everyday terms. She swims up to the top and she's feeling super proud and confident with her progress, what she just did. And then she walks past the dabblers, which are the girls that have perfect makeup. They're not wet. They're just sitting on the sidelines judging all the jumpers because, you know, we have those in life. No matter what you do decide, no matter how comfortable you create this environment for your learners, there are sometimes going to be dabblers. It's just part of life. And that's how she has to go through that. They're mean to her. Like, what was that, Twiggy? Is that all you got? Like, you got a wedgie when you hit the water. Like, they're really hateful. And she feels mortified. Even though she was just really proud of her accomplishment, she feels mortified and heads back to the shallow end where she feels safe again. And I think so often we do that. But I remember, or one of my favorite lines in the story is a line that my the dad who raised me a big chunk of my time said to me that day. He said, T, what do the dabblers know about jumping if they're not in the water? And then he later said, he had told me, like, if you want to learn how to cannonball, like, you ask the cannonballers. But he also said, my favorite line is this. He said, you were not born to sit on the sidelines and watch the jumpers. You were born to jump. And I think about that line in my life right now. And I also think about that line for anyone I have the opportunity to influence ever. Just, we were born to jump. we weren't born to sit and do the same thing we've always done and watch other people do things that we wish we could do. If there is something that you want to chase, if there is something you want to try in your classroom this year, if there is a student in your classroom that's really wanting to be whatever it is that they want to be, we were all born to jump. Like we just have to have that fundamental skill of swimming so we can make it out of the water, but we're all born to jump, right? We're all born to try something and to chase those dreams. And I feel like the more real we can be, the more we can create this culture where everyone feels safe, the more big jumps can happen or small jumps, any jumps that make someone feel a little boost of confidence and add a skill to their tool belt that they can then take and apply in life later. I think that's just like the most important thing we can offer our learners.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. As you're talking, I'm thinking through just like even like the inspiration that you have like provided me, and I had just kind of like follow your journey both in education. I think I was trying to think back and I couldn't find it. I have it somewhere. I'm going to find it and I'm going to link it in the show notes because of when I actually was able to see you speak, and it was a very long time ago. But I remember your book. I remember your talk. And now like I follow your journey on Instagram, and I'm just seeing like the self-care aspect of how you're going, and I'm like, these are the motivations that I need to do that myself, right? And so as you talk about jumping, I can't help but think about like the ripples that come from that, right? And then how we can, move outward and build those connections. And so I am also someone that loves logistics. I am an analytical brain. I like checklists. I like systems. It is another little nerdy passion of mine. So I do want to ask you, as you jump in and you wear a lot of hats, you are an educator, you are an author, you're a speaker, you're a mom, you're a creator, you're a CrossFitter, you're a runner, and there's probably a whole bunch of other hats that I didn't even list here. And we think about people listening to this message going, oh, this is what I needed, right? This is what I needed to hear. But how do I continue to show up, right? Whether it doesn't necessarily mean we have to go jump every day, but like I jump in and now what? How do I sustain, leaning into the things that we're passionate about? Can you share a little bit about your systems, and sometimes when I ask people this, they're like, well, I don't know that I really have a system. I'm like, but the beauty of it is like you are showing up every day. Like you can see your consistency in the work on your website and everything that you do, so how are you holding yourself accountable and productive in your journey, thinking about Cannonball, thinking about being real, thinking about education, and also like self-care? Like it's I think especially here we're recording in August and people are about ready to jump back into the classroom if they're not already in there. Like it's really hard to like find time for it all. So any insights into your processes?
You know, I think it's a great question. I definitely have a system. I mean, I definitely have systems in place for myself every day. I am ADHD medicated. You're welcome. So there's number one. If I don't take my medication, you very much know, I would not be able to hold a train of thought. Don't interview me on the weekend. I go
Yeah.
rogue. I love the best of both worlds on ADHD. And by the way, I'm just going to take a small tangent because
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
I do medicate Monday through Friday. The medication I have, luckily, I can be without medication on the weekends. And I personally love my personality without medication. It's just like so much more spontaneous. I don't really care. Like I'm not so rigid. And also I get a lot of beautiful ideas. So I
Mhm.
have a new system my therapist and I have worked with. Like when I'm on off medications on the weekends, I usually get a lot of great ideas for writing, for, just different idea things I can put in my presentations or workshops. I just get all my brilliant ideas off medication. So I write them down or I voice memo them to myself because doing anything with them is not going to happen on the weekend. I just get them. So then
Sure.
when I'm medicated Monday through Friday, I can put it all together. So it's a
Love it.
superpower, but you
Yeah.
just have to figure out how to harness it. So that's number one. ADHD meds. Secondly, I feel like I journal. I journal every day.
Mhm.
It's been a real big help for me. I know that's not necessarily what other people love to do, and I understand, but if you have any way of just somehow dumping your thoughts out, maybe that's a person that you can talk with. Maybe it is, for those who meditate or pray. Maybe there's other ways to do that. I word vomit in my journal, and it really helps me to clear up some space in my mind, so I then have space to do other things and to add other things inside of it throughout the day. That has been a very big help for me. um I journal like just word dumps, and then I also coach myself in a journal. Sometimes if I'm struggling with something, I will use some of the strategies, mind mapping and some different strategies. These are also on my website, but some different things I've learned from my therapist that just really help me to kind of collect my thoughts, get them down, so I can deal with them later, or at least I can just clear them out of my mind for a bit so I can then coach authors and be a lot for a lot of people, because that's really important for me to be fully present when I'm with others, especially when I'm like mentoring. So those are my morning routines. I do love to walk my dog and make sure I get my fitness in. For fitness, I put it in the calendar. It stays in my calendar. I start on Sunday and decide which workout times I'm going to have throughout the week based off of some of the different things that I've already had scheduled. But for the most part, my fitness goes in the calendar first,
Mhm.
and I build around it. I have a rule that I will move it once, and that's it. So if something big comes up and they are like, hey, we're going to have to put this in the middle of one of your workouts, um, I'll move it once, but that's it. If something else comes up, I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't move it again. You know, um, I have made that such a priority in my world, and I know that it really helps me for my mental health as well as my physical health. So it's better for everyone if I just keep that in the calendar. No, and also it holds me accountable, because yesterday I did not want to work out. So another thing I have is I have a group chat with a bunch of girls. We all hang out on there. It's ridiculous. I have to mute it most of the time. But we none of us wanted to work out on Monday, which is so strange because we're all like runners or CrossFitters. And just encouraging each other. Like, okay, I'm gonna go to everybody put your before picture right now. And then in 2 hours, I'm expecting to see everybody's after picture. And it makes me go, it makes them go. So sometimes just having a little group that you can hold yourself accountable with, that's also trying to put this, whatever it is that you're putting, making it a priority as well. And I'm a list girl. I'm a calendar girl. If it's not in the calendar, I'm probably not going to remember it. And if it's not on my list, I'm also probably not going to remember it. So I tell people all the time, if you want this to happen, it's got to go on the calendar. Like,
Yeah.
I find this to be a problem though, Aaron, now in my late 40s, entering the dating world. I feel like people are just so vague. I'm like, set a time, a date, and a place. Otherwise, it's a no for me, because I'm not going
Right.
to sit around and wait and figure out like when you're going to figure out the time
Right.
and place.
Right.
But I am so rigid with that calendar that, like, if they're not doing, and so people will say, geez, what happened? I'm like, you never set a time, a date, a place. Like, what am I supposed to do? You want to go out? Sure. And that's it. Like, what are we doing here?
Right.
Um, so I'm just like, I am pretty structured and then completely unstructured on the weekend.
Yeah.
I don't know if that helps, but that's kind of my system.
No, I love it. And I again, thanks for sharing, because I think it's one of these things that I think a lot of people assume others have some sort of like magic utopian type things to get things done, right? Like I think we self-internalize what we think everybody else is doing. And I
Mhm.
love your ideas of journaling. For me, I've started to get back. I got away from it, and I can feel a difference. I am a fan of morning pages. There's all sorts of ways to journal. Like, I mean, and
I
that's
used to
just
do
it.
morning pages
Yeah.
too. We just
And
word dump for
yeah,
3 minutes or like
yes,
2 minutes.
yeah. And just
Yeah.
getting it out. And to me, I would go back and look at stuff and like, I don't know where that was going, but there's something in there that I can work it with whenever. Or sometimes you just need to like, I just need to take it out of my brain and it just needs to be set somewhere. And I don't need to do most of it. I don't need to do anything with it. It just needs to get out of here so I can go forth with the work. And, I'm analog. I mean, since you were sharing, and people hearing the audio, I'm holding up notepads, but like I'm a list junkie. I've got colored notebooks or notepads for different topics. Yeah. And then the digital calendar just for the sanity of children and everything else and coordinating that. So, I love that you shared that because they are like simple things that can be so effective, as we talk about that. So I absolutely do appreciate you sharing. You talked about prioritizing your workout time first, and let's talk a little bit about self-care. Again, we're looking at August and so many educators are going to get back into the throes of managing their classroom and lesson plans and assignments and PD and then family or, whether it's their own kids or grandkids or whoever. I see it time and time again, that burnout that hits, right? Like when the weather here in Iowa, the weather changes, it starts to get cold. And then, that initial excitement's there. And then we kind of hit a wall. Some of that I think is just natural. The other thing that I see time and time again is that idea of people don't put themselves first because they feel they have to put all their students first, their family first, their kids first. And I'm not saying you neglect them, but talk to me a little bit more about just the importance of self-care. Because I'm thinking like, even if it's not working out, I like the idea of putting it in your calendar. Put in your calendar that I'm going to go walk my dog Mabel at 5:30 every day after work. Like just these little things, because it's so easy, I think, to lose ourselves when a school year builds back up, right? And especially for educators, I know not everybody listening is an educator, but most are. So talk a little bit more for you about, I mean, obviously exercise is important, but that idea of self-care, putting yourself first. And how did you, I think the big question is give yourself permission to do that. I think everybody knows it, right? You scroll, you see it, you read books on it. We have group chats that talk about it. And yet we still, for a lot of us, put ourselves second. How did you hold yourself accountable to put yourself first?
Yeah. I feel like the moment I start, okay, so this is a great question. And I'm trying to think of like, how do you always do this? Because people ask me this actually pretty
Yeah.
regularly. Like, how do you make this a priority all the time? Um, I find the moment I start allowing too many things that bring me down to clutter my world,
Mm,
I, my mind gets too cluttered and it gets on this, either it's a complacent kind of thought pattern or it can even be negative, right?
mm,
Because the more we let ourselves down, the more frustrated we become with ourselves, right? So one of the things, I love Dr. Derlin. She's my Dr. D is my therapist. One of the things we talked about a long time. By the way, if you don't have a therapist, I highly recommend it. I find she doesn't only help me like just throw out my thoughts and navigate them, but also she teaches me strategies and it's stuff that I've known before or maybe I've used before, but this is just an easy strategy that she taught me. And I kind of think it's a great way of thinking about taking care of yourself. So you can use this with your students too, which I really love. So you just take a piece of paper, fold it in half, and it's called a ups and downs T chart. You're basically making a T chart. We all know what a T chart is.
yeah.
On the left side, we're just going to write down all the things that bring us up. And on the right side, we're just going to write down all the things that bring us down. And we want to list them all out. Just write them down as much as you can. And I love this for self-regulation for myself, but I also love this for teaching students how to regulate themselves because when too many things that bring you down are happening all the time in your world And the things that bring you up are no longer happening. So working out brings me up. Walking my dog brings me up. Spending time with my son brings me up. Reading brings me up. Having my inbox down to at least 10 or less brings me up. Like, there's certain things on that left side that it makes me feel good. I have my coffee every morning. I am a coffee girl. I gotta have my coffee.
Cheers.
And so
That's
that
my
brings me
lifeline.
up,
Yeah.
but when I start realizing some of these things that bring me down are ever present in my world, and these things that bring me up have now been cluttered up and taken up. The time has been taken up and I don't get to do them anymore. I think to myself, I look at this chart, literally, physically, and like, okay, what do I need to do to get this back in place in my world? Because these things make me feel better. And that is a way of it's a simple way of taking care of yourself, because you know that these are taking up too much space. So can I calendar this stuff in, or whatever it is that works in your world to make sure those things start happening again? And I love doing this with students too, because you can say, hey, now you said that like playing basketball after school really makes you feel better. It helps you decompress. Like you're able to collect your thoughts and then you go home. Why are we not playing basketball anymore? Oh, one of my friends is asking me like to do this and that, and I don't really want to do it, but I'm doing it. How about we put that back in place? Like that was really helping you. And so reminding them that taking care of yourself is helpful for taking care of others as well. And if, we always hear it, like if your cup isn't full, how are you giving to others? After a bit, it does become completely depleted and we break down. And this happens in education. It happens with humans. It's very common. So self-care is super important to me. And mental health is just very valuable to me, and also keeping my peace, understanding that some things just don't deserve my energy. I'm just not going to give it to them. And also, if it's consuming so much of my energy that I'm not able to keep any of the things that really make me feel better, the things on the left side of that T chart in place, then I'm going to start figuring out ways to weed out some of those things that are consuming too much of my energy that are not serving me or the people that I need to serve. So
Yeah.
that's just kind of how I think of it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's I'm a list person, so that makes you're talking and I'm like, yes, that fills my cup to be able to make a list, to be able to look at those things, to kind of see, what's kind of clogging the gears, to be successful and be happy. And so I think that's such a wonderful, it's simple and powerful. And I think those are things that, anybody listening can easily apply, right? We don't have to go do a book study or go earn more college credit for that. Right? We can literally do this right after they're done finishing the podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. Right
so
now.
I want to be respectful of your time. So I've got two last questions. And one of them is, at the very beginning, I wanted to come back to the idea of story. And now that we keep talking about all these things, I mean, I have a lot of those, so I have to make it one. But as you've written books. So obviously you have to figure out a message, a through line to craft story. You're helping other educators write books. You're also, I mean, even that T chart to a certain degree is navigating your own story. Talk to me a little bit about the power of story. And the reason I'm asking this is like, this has become like in the last couple of years, such a passion of mine as we think about engagement in classrooms, we think about teaching and learning. And I'm always like to pose like, what's the through line in this project, in this lesson? What's the story? What's the message? Yes, we have standards. Yes, we've got all the things that we must be able to show that kids can do. But if we want meaning, there needs to be a story. And I'm thinking about that through that educator lens. But then I'm just thinking through all that you've shared today, like your own story, right? I'm thinking on the flip side reflection of what's our story to make the list to help us jump in, right? To cannonball in and to be real. And so talk to me a little bit, just however you want to kind of talk through that, like the importance of story, because it's a selfish question of mine, because I just love continue to weave and create through lines in everything that I do.
For sure. I feel like First of all, I'm very passionate about sharing your story. Obviously, Be Real is all about those first two letters are super important. Being relatable and exposing vulnerability both involve you sharing parts and pieces of your story to connect with others and show yourself more approachable. Um, Also, I think a lot about so I just have so many thoughts.
Yeah.
Like, where do I go with this?
It was pretty big. It was pretty
It's
wide
a big
open. So
question.
yeah, it was.
Um,
It was.
I feel like story is so important for back to talking about that culture of belonging. Culture of belonging is
Mhm.
super important to me. It's something I think about all the time when I'm speaking. Also, I think about you know, the story element and be able to share parts and pieces of your story. Not only does it help you heal and process parts and pieces of your struggle, your growth, it's therapeutic to like share your story because you're like, wow, from you asked me earlier, what is something you're proud of thinking about a moment of your past to now? And I'm like, wow, so much has happened in my story. And that does give you this sense of accomplishment, thinking about your narrative and that little character, that little girl with the crooked pigtails to now. I don't think she would ever imagine that she would be
Mhm.
here. So being able to share your story, I think is healing of sort. Also, back to the piece of connection, I feel like something everybody wants is to feel like they're connected, like they belong. I think a lot about Brene Brown. She had this interview, and I talk about this a little bit in my keynote, just briefly, but she was doing this study on belonging, and I'm obviously passionate about that. And she wanted to know what was the opposite of belonging in her study. And so
Mm.
she was asking around and even the crowd during the interview, she's like, what do you think the opposite of belonging is? So I'll just ask you, like, what do you think the opposite of belonging is?
I would have to say like loneliness, but I don't think that's right. Knowing Brene's
Isolation.
work. Yeah,
No,
isolation.
right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, she found through research that the opposite of belonging was actually fitting in. And it sounds
Mm.
so weird. And
Yeah.
it definitely raised my eyebrows when I heard it the first time. But she said, because when we are fitting in, we often have to leave out so many parts and pieces of who we really are to be a part of that crowd that we no longer belong to ourselves. So, how could we possibly belong to something greater? And I think when we go back to sharing our story, the more real we can be, the more we allow others to show up as their real self, exactly who they are, how they are, our learners, everyone within our space, like anyone we get to have the opportunity to be in their realm of influence. If people can just show up who they
Mm.
are, I think that is the part of our story that truly connects us. It really makes others feel understood. And you said earlier, it gives them permission to be who they are, to be vulnerable, right? And I think story, it's your story and allowing others to share their story. It's just empowering. It's so inspiring to be able to hear someone else's path and how they had some failures, they had some comebacks, they like won some things, they went through adversity, they still have dreams they want to chase. There's just something so inspirational and empowering about that. And
Yeah.
shoot, what else could I say about story? Besides the fact that it just builds this deeper level of empathy, and the levels of empathy that we're able to build, I think the stronger the connection of people and the more connected your learners feel to you or your people around you feel to you, the more likely that when you later deliver content that they're going to trust you and they're going to believe that content and they're going to actually want to learn it. They're going to want to perform. People that believe so much in me, like Dave back in the beginning of my story of this podcast,
Yeah.
I was scared, to try some of these things, but because he believed so much in me, there was no way I was letting him down. You know, I wanted to, um, I wanted to do my best work, right? Because he believed so much in me. And I think that's how it is. The more we share who we are, we allow others to do the same. We build those we build those bridges, you know, from real life to real connection, and we're able to create this beautiful culture of belonging, for lack of a better word. It's just,
Yeah.
it's meaningful. It means something to both you and the learner, and they want to learn from you at that point.
Yeah.
So I feel like story is, it's every bit a part of what we do as teachers. I think it's hard to decipher like what parts of our story is appropriate to share at what times. But I feel like as educators, as humans, we start to learn that.
Yes.
We
Right.
start to learn like when a kid needs to hear certain parts, a piece of our story that's maybe extra vulnerable. But for the most part, I feel like the more we can share our story with others, the more others realize that we truly are more alike than we are different.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so good. And I can't help but think of the famous quote too as you're talking, like the idea of fitting in. I knew as you were referencing Brene Brown, I knew it wasn't going to be an obvious
Yeah,
response of
it's
with
never
the work that
obvious.
she does. And I will find the proper attribution for this quote because I don't know who the original. I should know because I use it all the time. But it reminds me of the opposite of love isn't hate; it's indifference. And I always think so much through that lens and so much of this work. And as we finish up here, as you talk about the idea of story, I think that's maybe one of the first challenges for the listeners is to, what is your story? I mean, we know our life, but I think sometimes we sell ourselves short of how far we've come in our life journeys and to be able to acknowledge, right? I think when I kind of posed to you, what would the Tara of 10, 15 years ago say about where you are now? Maybe that's the challenge for all of us, right? Myself included. You know, what have I come? And I think sometimes we forget all the amazing things we do because we get, into that daily routine. I think that's something really, really profound in there so that we can, the more we learn and lean into ourselves, the better we can be for others, whether that's students in the classroom or our family or whoever needs us that are in our circles of influence. Tara, this has been an incredible podcast, as I knew it would be. I want to end here with just two-pronged final question thought is I want to make sure that if there is any other ideas, advice, something we didn't talk about that you want to make sure the listeners get a chance to hear about you, that you get a chance to share that. And then the second piece is this will all be the show notes, but for people that definitely have been listening to this, they're going to want to know more about you if they don't already know about you. Where are the best places for them to find you and your work and your journey?
Sweet. Awesome. Um, well, there's always a lot to talk about, right? I won't bore you guys for a whole nother hour, but I will say, like, if you're looking for learning more about my journey, you can find a lot on my website, which is tarammartin.com. So there's two M's in the middle. Apparently, there's more than one Tara Martin. Who knew? And then Instagram, I'm taraMmartin.real. So two M's there. And that's where you're going to see like some fitness, real life kind of thing, not as much professional. If you're looking for strictly professional, you can follow me on X at Tara Martin EDU. I do write in my blog pretty often on tarammartin.com. And I think, like if you're interested in kind of more what we're talking about today or any of these like tools that I've talked about today, you can find them on the search bar of my website. You can find almost all those mind mapping, all those different kinds of tools. But if you're looking for just like kind of inspiration about something I'm reading or something I'm learning, you might find some of that on my blog. And I would love to hear from you. There's a comment section. You can also send me an email, tarammartin.real@gmail.com for any kind of questions or thoughts you have on the podcast, or also in anything that you might have found on there that you have questions or you're trying with your students. I do highly. I really am super passionate about my children's book, especially starting school. I feel like the Cannonball In message is so valuable for all learners. I say I've written it for ages 8 to 80, but I feel like it's not because I wrote it. I think it's just such a powerful message for all people to encourage them that this is a new year, this is a new start, and allowing all your students to come in with that fresh start. I was a terrible kid as a kid. Terrible. I lived in my principal's office, Mr. Sessions' office, every single day. I had a special chair in there because I literally went in there every single day. I was ADHD unmedicated at the point. Um, and I feel like, just having a teacher that lets you come in and have a fresh, clean start to the school year is so important. That teachers that did that for me, they stood out to me. And also reminding them that you are capable of doing all kind of things. Like you are capable of making these big splashes, and reminding also you as educators, if you're listening and you are an educator, or if you get to serve as a leader in any capacity, you also are making big splashes. And every time you make a jump, you may not ever know the far-reaching effects of your splash and of your impact, but just know that when we do try these new things in our classroom, and we do allow our students to be completely real in themselves, it is going to open up new things that are happening in our classroom that might be just slightly disorder, seem a little like out of order. But in the end, I think it's going to create a community where learning can definitely take place a lot easier. So we always say make time for those relationships, but if you can embed that in everything that we do throughout the day, throughout the school year, I think that's really where the power comes. And that's where you start making those splashes that we really can't even measure the effects of those waves. So thank you so much for having me. I've had a fun time.
Yes, thank you for sharing all that you have, and we'll get all those links into the show notes for people to check out your website, find the book, all the great stuff that you've got going on, and yeah, gosh, just what a perfect podcast conversation that I think I needed for my own self, and I know so many listeners are going to just gain so much from this. So thank you so much for carving out some time to talk with me today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Hey, y'all. Woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning, chilling with coffee mugs, me and coffee chugs, talking education all across the nation, pushing boundaries, thinking innovation. Chaos.